Hello and welcome to Unity Presbyterian Church Online. This week in worship, Pastor David concludes our series on encounters with Jesus with a look at the Thankful Leper. Let's listen.
Well, as Bailey mentioned, this Thursday is Thanksgiving, and I know that your plans might look a little bit different this year, but I really hope that everything just goes perfectly and that it's a good Thanksgiving celebration for you. But when we're being honest, I mean, it doesn't always go well, does it? I mean, we can do a lot of planning and try to get everything just perfect, but sometimes our Thanksgiving ends up like this picture. Not that picture. Janine's saying, hang on. You're going to be really curious what this is now, aren't you? Right. A burnt oven? Yeah, we don't want that to be the picture that describes our Thanksgiving festivities. I heard this week of two stories that people told where their Thanksgiving ended up more like that than the picture-perfect Thanksgiving. One person, he was making his very first Thanksgiving meal, had never done it all before, and was really kind of stressing about it and was nervous about it, but got everything ready. The table was set, friends and family were over, and everything, it looked good. And people started digging into the turkey and just remarked like, oh, this is so tasty. You did a great job. And then one by one, everyone began to go, my mouth is really hot. My tongue, it feels like it's on fire. What's wrong with me? And they realized that the cook, instead of using normal pepper, ended up making a mistake and used the spicy jalapeno pepper that got baked in the turkey. And then as you ate more and more of it, you realize, wow, my mouth is now on fire. Now, the cook claimed it was by accident. I don't know for sure. Maybe it was a little bit of a prank on his family. But the second story I heard, it was of a mother who wanted the perfect Thanksgiving meal. And it wasn't just going to be a small meal. This was a giant meal with lots of family. And so the table was set. All the family were over. She got out the turkey. All that was left to do was to carve the turkey. And so she takes the knife, begins carving, and the knife glides off of the meat thermometer that she forgot was still in the turkey. And the knife goes into her hand, cuts her hand, blood goes all over, and she's immediately rushed to the ER for stitches. As if that's not bad enough, then she comes back hours later. She realizes that all of the food has been eaten. The family is now sitting on the couch doing their like, oh, we're so full after Thanksgiving type thing. And all of the dishes are still dirty and strewn all over the kitchen. Here's what she's quoted as saying, I love my family, but they are still unforgiven for that, which, I can kind of see. Now, don't worry. I bet your Thanksgiving will turn out a lot better than that. But even if it doesn't, even if everything goes wrong, even if it is the worst Thanksgiving imaginable, this time of year is still an opportunity for us to do one important central thing, which is to count our blessings. Now, I know you know that. And at times it can seem trite or overdone. Yes, Thanksgiving, count my blessings. Go around the table, say what you're thankful for. I get that. But I also realize that this is an opportunity to really acknowledge our gratitude. And when we do that, truly from our hearts, when we acknowledge the things we're grateful for, it can deeply transform us. Really, if we become grateful people, if we have a heart that overflows with thanksgiving, that has the power to change us, to change our attitudes, to change our outlook on life and the interactions we have with people. Yes, we truly want to be people who are defined by thankfulness. And so because of that, since this is our last week when we studied the encounters that Jesus had with people, today, in honor of Thanksgiving, And in honor of us trying, as Christians, to be people defined by grateful hearts, we're going to look at a story where Jesus has an encounter with people and then teaches them and teaches us something profound about thankfulness. Well, the encounter begins in this way. It says, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. And as he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have mercy on us.'" So these 10 men have leprosy. And leprosy, I know you've probably heard of it before, but when you really dig into the symptoms, it is a horrible disease. Leprosy is a skin disease where you have disfiguring sores all over your body. You also have nerve damage, and so you're just constantly in pain. You've got lumps and bruises all over your skin, and it's extremely, extremely contagious. And so because of that, because it's such a horrible disease to get, and in this time period, there was no known cure for it. And because it was so contagious, there was a lot of stigma that occurred with having this disease. Other people did not want it. And so because of that, if you were diagnosed with leprosy, you had to then leave your family, leave your community, and go live with other people who had leprosy. So not only are you in pain and dealing with this disease, but you're dealing with it alone. You're now isolated and apart from your community. And in this desperate situation where they're cut off from their family and struggling with this disease, in that desperate situation, they encounter Jesus. And you saw in this scripture, they see Jesus walking towards the village. And from a distance, they do the only thing that they're allowed to do. They yell. They yell to Jesus. They say, "Jesus, have mercy on us. Heal us. Look at our situation. Jesus, won't you help us?" Now, they yelled to Jesus from a distance because they were following the Jewish laws of their day. I mean, just like we've got laws that say don't run a red light. In this time period, the law was if you have leprosy, you maintain a certain distance from other people. And so they see Jesus coming, but they can't get close to him. They can't have a conversation with him and plead their case. They can't tell Jesus about what they're experiencing. The only thing that they can do is yell and hope. And that is what they do, and let's see how Jesus responds to them in this moment. The next verse says, "When he saw them, he said, 'Go, show yourselves to the priests.' And as they went, they were cleansed." Okay, when I read this for the first time, I wondered to myself, why doesn't Jesus just heal them on the spot? I mean, Jesus does that a lot in the Gospels, doesn't he? Where someone comes to him for healing, and in that moment, Jesus says, "Go, you are healed." And they are healed in that experience with Jesus. But he doesn't do that here. Instead, he says, "Go to the priests." And it's in their going that they are healed. Well, I did a little bit of research on that this week, and I discovered that it was the priests, and the priests alone, that could declare someone cleansed. And until you were declared cleansed, you were not allowed back into your community. You were not allowed to rejoin your family systems. No, the priest had to examine you, and upon examination, if you no longer had leprosy, then you were declared clean, and you could come back into the community. So Jesus is following the customs of his day, where they have leprosy, and he just says, well, go and show yourselves to the priests. We see this law back in the book of Leviticus. If you have read Leviticus before, you know that Leviticus is that book of laws about how the Jewish people in these Mosaic times govern themselves. And so we see in Leviticus 14, it says, "This shall be the ritual for the leprous person at the time of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall make the examination. And if the examination shows that the leprosy is somehow cured, then that person is declared clean and can come back." So Jesus follows the custom of his day, says, "Go and show yourselves to the priest." But notice this. It was not in Jesus' command for them to show themselves to the priest that they were made well. Now, Jesus doesn't simply say, "Be healed. Now that you're healed, go and show yourself to the priest." Instead, he just tells them to go. And it is in their going, as they went, we're told, that is when the healing occurred. And so what we're seeing in this is that it is in their act of obedience that healing took place. Now, we can learn something from that for us today. Because there are times in your lives where, obviously we don't have leprosy, we're not dealing with that, but there are times where we deal with pain. As Kelly was saying, as we deal with really hardships in our lives. I know you've had moments where you've cried out to God like these 10 lepers, saying, "God, just have mercy on me. God, I need you. God, help me." But it's not in the recognition of our need that we're healed. No, that's just the first step. It's recognizing that, yes, we're in pain, that, yes, we need God, but it's not in that recognition alone that we are healed. But where does that healing take place? Where does that journey towards wholeness take place? It takes place when we start walking with God. And in obedience, when we start in faithfulness, living our lives with God and shaping our lives around God's principles, those are the times when we feel like, okay, now God is beginning to change me. I'm beginning to feel some sort of healing. I'm beginning to feel wholeness that comes from walking with God. Yes, that phrase, "as they went," is such an important phrase for us. We can acknowledge the problem. Recognizing our need is like diagnosing the disease. We say, yeah, okay, I know that this is how I'm sick, or this is where my need is. But this story shows us that that's not where the healing takes place. No, instead, the walking in obedience with God, that's like the taking your medicine. That's like working over time in process to then be changed inside out by God. That's what happens with these 10 lepers. Jesus just says, "Go. Show yourself to the priest," and in faith they go, and as they went, they are healed. But one of them, this is what the next verse says, not all of them, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice, and he threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. So 10 lepers had their lives changed that day. Yes, 10 lepers experienced healing. 10 lepers were able to re-enter their communities and rejoin their family systems. 10 lepers were changed that day, but only one leper turned back and thanked Jesus. Well, in this story, what we see is that 90% of the people who are healed, once they're healed, just go on with their lives. Yeah, just one person recognizes the source of that healing, which is Jesus Christ. Now, I don't want to come down too hard on those 9 lepers who did not come back, because honestly, I see a lot of myself in them. They suffer from something that I think we suffer from too. I call it spiritual amnesia. The spiritual amnesia is, I define it like this: it's to experience a blessing, but forget the source of that blessing. The book of James tells us that every good and perfect gift is from above. And what that means is that every good and perfect gift, every blessing you have received in your life, the source of that blessing is God. But how often are we like those 9 lepers? I know I am, where we experience a blessing. We recognize that we've got something to be thankful for, but if we're lucky, maybe we remember to shoot up a quick, thank you prayer to God, and then we just move on with our lives. And we forget to really thank the source of that blessing in our lives. We suffer from spiritual amnesia. We forget too quickly and move on too fast. If you're wondering, do I suffer from that? Do I have spiritual amnesia? Well, don't worry. We've got some symptoms that we're going to walk through here, and you can diagnose yourself if you're really dealing with any of this. So here's the first symptom of spiritual amnesia. We convince ourselves that we don't really need to thank God. After all, we work hard, and we are the source of our blessings. And it's because of my hard work alone that I'm able to have all that I have in my life. Yes, when we begin to convince ourselves that we have no one else to thank but us, that is a symptom of spiritual amnesia, because every good and perfect gift is from God. Or here's another symptom. We begin to think that the good things that happen in life just happen by accident or chance. Yeah, we begin to think that our lives are governed more by happenstance than by a loving God. And when we begin to see everything just as random, we suffer from spiritual amnesia. Or here is the third symptom. The third symptom is, maybe we hold more of a pessimistic attitude on life, where you have a really hard time conjuring up what is it that you're thankful for, because you look around at the world and see what bad shape it's in, or you turn on the news and say, there's nothing to be thankful for here, and you approach life with a pessimistic attitude. I call this the bah humbug symptom. Do any of those symptoms describe you? I bet all of us can look at that and go, yeah, maybe I have a little spiritual amnesia. But let us not celebrate the blessings in our lives and we forget the source from whom all blessings flow. That's what this story is really encouraging us to remember. So one leper realizes that he is cleansed. He comes back to Jesus, the source of his cleansing, and falls down at Jesus' feet in authentic gratitude to God. And what does Jesus say? The next verse says that Jesus asked a question. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner, the Samaritan?" And then he said, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Okay, that's an interesting statement, that your faith has made you well. Because all 10 lepers were healed. We already know that. On the way to the priest, they were healed. And yet this one leper who comes back to Jesus, Jesus says, "Your faith has made you well." What Jesus is indicating is that this one leper, in that act of returning and identifying the source of the blessing, that one leper experienced not just physical healing, but also a spiritual healing. You see, that one leper was able to reorientate his life towards God. And so he was able to experience a almost spiritual renewal alongside his physical renewal that occurred. Yeah, 10 lepers were able to physically say, we don't have leprosy anymore. But only one was able to say spiritually, I know who the source of my healing is. And he's the example for us today. Because the majority of people in this world may be able to truly capture an attitude of gratitude and say thank you for things in our lives. But it's going to be less people like this one leper who can truly identify that God is the source of it all. And then remember consciously to always go back to God and say, God, I'm thankful for this and this and this. Now, I don't want to come down too hard on the other 9 lepers because, again, I see a lot of myself in them. And I came across this picture, which I think is a really helpful one when trying to get into the mindset of these other 9 lepers. So this is a picture drawn by a person in Cameroon, Africa. And he drew it after he heard this story. And here's what I really like about this picture. You look at these 9 lepers in the background. I mean, you've got Jesus in the red and the one leper falling down at his feet. But what are the other 9 lepers doing? They are filled with joy. They are tearing off their bandages. They are throwing their crutches in the air. They are just thrilled beyond belief that they are healed, that they are finally healed. Now, what I like about this story is that it reminds me that, these lepers are not just selfish. The reason that they didn't go back to Jesus is not just a selfish heart, but instead, I think they're just caught up in the blessing. They are just caught up in the sense that I'm healed now. And they're so focused on the healing that takes place that they just are distracted and forget to thank the source of that healing. And it makes me wonder how often I get caught up in my own blessings and how often I forget the source of my blessings. Now, it's not intentional or malicious in any way, but I can think of times where I am praying so fervently for something, hoping so much for something, and when God answers that prayer, I am ecstatic like those 9 lepers were, but then I immediately go on with my life because I've got my thing now. I can just go on. And if I'm lucky, I remember a quick thank you prayer to God. But I want more than that. I want a heart that is reorientated towards God. And that basis of my interactions with God is true and genuine thankfulness. Now, let me give you a more modern example. Because there is a difference, isn't there, between genuine gratitude and just kind of being polite. Saying, okay, yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that this happened. Think of the last time you got a gift that you didn't really want. Maybe it was for your birthday or Christmas, and you open that gift and you look at it and go, oh, thank you. How did you know I wanted a purple scarf with puppies on it? This is just perfect. Now, you still thank the person, right? Because that's the polite thing to do. That's the right thing to do. But you don't feel it. That's not genuine gratitude. Now, contrast that with an experience where you open up a gift and you realized, wow, this person knows me so well. I'm surprised by this gift. I did not see this coming. I am so genuinely thankful for this gift. What's your response there? Yeah, there's a difference between just being polite and being genuinely in gratitude. So now take that away from just gifts that we get and receive from people and put it towards your relationship with God. How often do we, go through the repetition of saying thank you to God because we know it's what we should do? It's the right religious thing to do. It's the polite thing to do. And then contrast that with how often do we fall down at Jesus' feet and say, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being the source of my blessings in my life. That's the encouragement in this story, is to act like that one leper, to not get distracted by the blessings in our lives and forget that God is the source of it all. To conjure up in our hearts an act of genuine praise. That is really what this story is proposing for us today. Genuine gratitude, what you and I should be striving for in our relationships with God. Because remember, every good and perfect gift is from above. And if that is true, and if God has blessed you as much as God has blessed me, which I know God has, then the only proper response to that is a life of praise, a life of gratitude, and a life of thanksgiving. Amen.
If you would like more information about Unity Presbyterian Church, please visit our website at www.unitypres.org or visit us on Facebook. This is the Unity Presbyterian Church podcast. Have a great week.